As I've said, Alabama plays Auburn on Saturday, um, and it's a huge game. I mean, there's no other way to put it. College game day will be in attendance. It is a 1 versus 1 matchup, depending upon what poll you look at. Auburn number 1 in the AP poll, Alabama number 1 in the coaches poll. Apparently that this is like the fifth such matchup where it's a 1 versus 1. This is a 1 versus 2 game, no matter how you want to look at it. And from what the South Union 16 guys have found and looked up, the home team is about 12-6 in these games historically. And that's good news for Alabama. But obviously, no matter what, this is going to be a phenomenal game. This is the biggest game in Alabama basketball history from a regular season standpoint. Obviously, the Final Four game is going to be considered as bigger all time, but this will be considered one of the biggest regular season games of all time. And, crazily enough, when you think of the history of the Alabama-Auburn rivalry, this is the first time that a 1 versus 2 have met, even if you include the football part of this rivalry, which is obviously much more lauded and known about. And so when you think about that, it's just incredible what Alabama and Auburn have accomplished. So props to Nate Oates, props to Bruce Pearl, what they've done on the basketball floor and what they've done to raise the level of this rivalry on the national scale needs to be applauded. And because every eye in college basketball will be on this game on Saturday. College game day will be there. I'm going to be at college game day. Then the game's going to happen at 3, and I can assure you every eye in all of college basketball will be on this game. It's the most anticipated game of the season for all of college basketball, not just for Alabama, the state of Alabama, as it always is. First things first, before we get into the actual stats and what we need to know about, it is a Crimson out. So if you are going to be in attendance for this game, wear Crimson. I fully expect this turnout to be absolutely phenomenal. If you don't have your tickets now, I'm sorry, the price is going to be crazy. For the past year, it feels like the prices on SeatGeek and StubHub have been over $275 to get in. Again, this is going to be a crazy game, and I fully expect the turnout to be phenomenal. Get there early, be loud. I'm really excited for what this is going to be, and I fully expect an incredible environment for what will be a very, very, very good basketball game. So let's get into the game. First things first, I think when you talk about Auburn this season, you have to talk about the offensive efficiency. This is a game where Alabama has been a pretty good defense this season. Not elite. If you look at a full season standpoint, Auburn is 17th in the country in defense. From a conference-only perspective, they are 6th. When you look at Alabama, Alabama is 40th, and in conference, they are 8th. So this is a standpoint where Auburn, in both cases, whether it be conference only or full season, Auburn is the better defensive team. However, their offense has been very, very good, right? That's the part that, you think about when you see this Auburn team, is the offensive output that they've been able to show. And it's because they are the number 1 currently ranked KenPom team of all time. From that offensive output, we will see how it shakes out by the end of the season. But currently, their offensive output numbers are number 1 ever recorded. Alabama's numbers, however, are top 10 ever recorded still. And if you filter by conference-only games, when you look at only the conference games, Alabama actually has a better offensive rating than Auburn. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at some of these ratings. Alabama and Auburn are both on the level of absolutely meteoric offenses, and the defenses leave some to be desired, but both of them are in the top half of the SEC, right? So that's what you're looking at when you're looking at these teams. Very similar from that standpoint. Another stat that you're going to see that's incredibly, incredibly similar is how few shots they give up from the three-point line and how few shots they give off an assisted basket, right? Auburn is 34th in 3-point attempts that they give up and 4th in assisted baskets. And Alabama is 33rd and 8th in those stats. So very, very similar to each other. Alabama has done a little bit better job of this in conference, currently being number 1 in both stats. Auburn gives up a few more three-pointers in conference, being 4th, but they are 2nd in assists still, right? So when you're looking at this game, both teams' game plans are going to be run you off the three-point line and make you play isolation ball whenever possible, right, to force you into a bad shot. They're not going to want you to actually get into your offensive flow and to get an assist off, right? Stay attached to shooters and play just sound defense. Both teams have been very good about that this season, and it will be a huge key to this game, right? Who can run the plays, whether they be set plays from Auburn's standpoint or just flow plays from Alabama's standpoint, to get a shooter open and get a shot that will need to be made. Because not only are you going to have to get the open shot, but in this game, you got to make it, right? Open shots are going to not be easy to come by. So if you get an open shot in this game, no matter what team you're on, you better make the shot, right? A couple of things really to note. Auburn ended up winning this Vanderbilt game, but over the last 2 games, especially that Florida game, you could really tell that Auburn was, A, being kind of forced into shots that they didn't love, and B, their body language when they were missing shots was left some to be desired, right? You know, you've seen actually a lot of Auburn fans talk about this, and it's going to be something to watch, right? Alabama's not been the best offensive or best defensive team in conference. I'm not saying they are, but what Alabama has done a pretty good job of is forcing you to take the shots they want you to take. The number of 3-pointers that they give up is near worst in the conference, and the number of 2-pointers they give up is, the highest number in the conference. Meaning they do not give up threes and they give up a decent amount of twos. And that's mostly because Alabama is forcing you into taking tough twos and is more than willing to let you take some of those twos. So part of this game is going to be, are those tough shots for Auburn falling, right? Any of your mid-ranges, any of your bunnies, any of your floaters, like, are these shots falling for Auburn? If they are, it's going to make out for a super close, really long game. If they're not, that's something just to kind of keep in mind, because that's the shot that Alabama wants you to take. And so if they're under their, average or percentage on that, that's something that's going to play very well into Alabama's standpoint. It's also, is Alabama able to get the shot blocked with Cliff Amore and Grant Nelson? Both of those guys have played really, really key roles down in the interior. So how are they playing? Cliff is going to have his hands full with potential player of the year in Janai Broome. I fully expect Alabama also to potentially throw Aiden Sherrell's body at him. I fully expect Alabama to put a little bit smaller guy in Mo D on him. Grant Nelson's going to have time on him. Playing and defending against Janai Broome is going to need to be a key in this game. He's somebody that can step out and make the three. He's somebody that rebounds incredibly well. He's somebody that Alabama's just going to have to know exactly where he's at and exactly what they're going to do against him the entire game. A couple other stats that I think are going to be really important in this game and may give you a little bit of an idea before the game gets to halftime as to, how is Alabama doing? What does it look like? First one is actually offensive rebounding. When you look at a rebounding standpoint, Auburn has been very good at rebounding the ball, but the main person that's been very good at rebounding the ball has been Janai Broome. He's top 25 in offensive and defensive rebounding. And so keeping him off the glass is a big key. But the reason I say that is currently Auburn is 4th in the conference in offensive rebounding, right? Alabama's 2nd in that stat. But in defensive rebounding, Auburn is actually 14th in the conference. They have not been a great defensive rebounding team, especially in conference games. And this is something that if Alabama, as we know, can get that offensive rebound, we talked about those assisted shots, we talked about those three-point shots. As most of you know, the best time to get a three-pointer is off an offensive rebound. So if Auburn cannot keep Alabama off the glass, if you can get a guy like Cliff Amore, if you can get a guy like Mo Diabate to just get that physical rebound and get it out to a shooter, that's going to be the best moment to get a three-point shot, right? So that's something really to keep in mind is, how is Alabama doing on the glass? I'm not saying Alabama needs to have 20 offensive rebounds. It would be awesome if they could. But just is Alabama able to get those timely offensive rebounds and kick out to open shooters? Because if they are, that's going to be a big key to this game, because you see a lot of breakdown in the defense when there's a scramble for the ball. And again, that's going to be the time that you're most likely to get that offensive rebound, kick out three. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing to look at is Alabama turning over the ball a lot, right? Auburn is second in the conference in steals. They do a pretty good job turning you over. I'm not saying they're as good as like an Ole Miss or a Vanderbilt, but they do a pretty good job turning you over. Thankfully, here recently, a lot of Alabama's turnovers from what we've seen have not actually been steals in the most case. They've actually been unforced. So it seems to be something that can be cleaned up, but that's something you're going to have to look at in this game, right? If Alabama is just giving away empty possessions in this game at home, it's not going to be good, right? So that is something you're going to want to watch in this game, see what the turnover numbers are doing, see how Alabama is performing on offense, because I fully expect Nate is not going to try to withstand the storm of turnovers as he maybe did in the Texas game. If somebody's turning over the ball in back-to-back possessions, they're probably coming out, right? This game means too much. You cannot have empty possessions in this game. And the talent is going to be on the floor in this game. You just cannot have those level of empty possessions. So simply put, I think this game is going to be absolutely incredible. I think that the teams match up very well against each other. Both teams are in a standpoint where they have played incredibly tough non-conference schedules. They are top 2 in the country for a reason. They've also just proven that they are the top 2 teams in the country. They have really deep benches. I think Alabama has maybe a slightly deeper bench, whereas Auburn, has 6 guys that they play that have averaged in double figures. 2 other guys off the bench that are at 5 points a game. Some other, guys like Chris Moore that just is more of a rotational piece. But they have done a good job, all season. The question for Auburn is also going to be a little bit of a health one. We talked about Darion Reed a little bit earlier, saying that I am not sure if he's going to play in this game for Alabama. He's been out for the last few games, as y'all are aware. But he's been a game time decision each game. I'm sure this is one that they were trying to get him ready before. So we will see if he does play. But, Auburn is also going through a little bit of injury issues with like a Chad Baker-Mazara. He does a lot for them. Is he going to be healthy enough to play in this game? I fully expect him to play. What kind of level is he at in this game is going to be a question. So that's when you're looking at this game. I think that the depth of both teams are as good as anyone in the country. The scoring of both teams are as good as anyone in the country, and this is just going to make out for an incredible basketball game. So let's actually think about the prediction. I'm going to predict that Alabama wins this game because they're the home team. I do also think a little bit that, and I don't know if slump is the right word because they only lost 1 game, but even what you saw out of the Auburn game against Vanderbilt, Chaney Johnson is not considered one of their best players. He's not really the guy you were expecting of a big offensive output out of. But Chaney Johnson is the guy who had to kind of will them to victory at times against Vanderbilt. Chaney Johnson ends up with 20 points. Denver Jones scores 21 points. Janai Broome, to his credit, ended up getting 17. But just in general, Auburn did not play the game that you expect out of Auburn, right? What we've grown accustomed to this season against Vanderbilt. And for sure did not play the game you would expect against Florida, they ended up losing by 9, but were down by much more than that in the jungle. So this is a situation where it feels like there are some people that maybe are going through slight shooting slumps and are letting it get in their head. Is that something that I think will continue for this game? No. Right? This is the Alabama-Auburn game. I don't care what you're going through. You have to perform your best, right? So I don't think either coach is going to, leave a guy out there and try to let him shoot his way out of a slump if he's just missing and missing and missing, right? This is going to be a game in which the people performing the best at the time of this game are going to be on the floor. Because that's what you have to do, right? You can't have empty possessions, and you need to put the guys who are performing the best on the court at any given time, because any empty possession could lead to points for the other team. And with both of these offenses performing at the level they have been, you just cannot give up empty possessions. You can't give up turnovers. You can't give up, opportunities for the other team to run in transition. So that's just something you're going to have to pay attention to. I think Alabama pushes the pace at a better rate than Auburn. It's been talked about a lot about how Alabama has not had a game in under 70 possessions since Purdue. I fully expect Alabama to get this tempo up a little bit, which does play into our favor. I think also when that tempo gets up a little bit, that sometimes plays into the rebounding situation. Potentially could play into the ability to get some open threes and assists, because when you're moving, sometimes your transition defense, lacks a little bit, and you can either have trail threes, shrink threes, etc. So that's something that I expect Alabama to try to push for. But nevertheless, I expect this to be an incredible game and a tight game throughout. Could I see this game getting into double digits? Sure. I wouldn't predict it, and I wouldn't expect it. Right? Could I see it, in general as an outcome? Yes. Would I expect it if this game is played 20 times? Maybe once, maybe twice. These two teams are too closely matched. This rivalry is too intense. These coaches are too good. I fully expect this to be a game from tip to finish. Right? So I do expect this game to be in the 80s. Potentially in the 90s, but I think with both teams, trying to stop the assist numbers, I think if this game gets into the 90s, it's because of a free throw standpoint. So I would expect maybe low 90s. I would look at this game as like an 92-89, 89-77, or 87, right? A 2 to 3 point game. I do think that Alabama wins this game because it's in Coleman Coliseum. I know that Alabama actually has not played as well in Coleman as they have on the road this season, but I expect that to change because I think the reason, or part of the reason why that has been, is Alabama just thrives on the trying to prove a point, right? These guys, for whatever reason, have had that almost vendetta and, way like, hey, let's prove a point on the road. Let's have the fans leave early or whatever, right? The villain mentality. They've done a really good job of that this season. And so, I expect this team is going to know what's at stake in this game. They're going to see that the AP poll ranked them in second. And this is going to be a situation where Alabama wants to prove on their home floor why they should be the number one team in the country. So that is what I expect for this game. I expect this to be an incredibly good game throughout. It will be a very tight game. I do think that with some of the SEC conference numbers, it gives a little bit of an idea that Alabama is playing some of its best basketball right now. I think that fully coincides with what you're seeing, obviously with Chris Youngblood coming in and playing such a key role that he has played this season. There are some new guys to this rivalry. There's some guys that I expect this rivalry means a little more to. You guys like Mark Sears and LeBaron Philon and Aiden Holloway. Two of those guys from the state of Alabama. Another one of those guys played for the opposing team last season, right? So this is going to be a game that there are some guys, and I'm sure this game will matter as much as any game they ever play in Alabama. So that is something you're going to want to look at. How is the body language? How are are they getting too sped up and having some extra turnovers? This is something you just have to look at and see, because I think any of these things will give you a little bit of a look into how's this game going. Is there something Alabama has to clean up? And do we potentially know how the ending is going to look like? So I will say, like I said, I'm looking at this at around a 3-point game. I think my official prediction is actually going to be 92 to 89 for Alabama. Like I said, I do think that Alabama can win this game, of course, and I am going to predict it. No matter what happens in this game, Alabama still has its season ahead of it. This is going to be the toughest stretch that anybody has in the entire country. The next 7 games Alabama has will all be ranked teams. They will all be quad 1 games. But if Alabama has the goal to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, to win the SEC regular season, to have a good chance to be able to advance and do as well as they've ever done in the NCAA tournament as well as the SEC tournament, you have to be able to prove that you can beat elite teams. And there's no better game than against the current number 1 team in the country. So I fully expect that Alabama has that ability, and I think that they will prove it. I think this team has been built to be able to withstand and win some games like this. And so that's what I'm going to say. I do think that Alabama wins this game, as I said, 92-89. We will have a breakdown no matter what happens on Sunday. So Sunday evening, I will have an episode breaking down this game. We will also do a preview of our next game. It's going to be happening on Wednesday against Missouri on the road. But that episode is going to come out on Sunday. So if you are interested in hearing my thoughts, hearing what I have to say, again, that's going to come out Sunday evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Again, sorry this came out a little later than anticipated. I really do appreciate the support, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.